As you know, Khrushchev famously said in November 18, 1956, whether you like it or not, history is on our side, we will bury you. Now, the Chinese don't have the kind of aspirations that the Russians had to in any way prove the superiority of the communist ideology.
When China finally becomes the world's biggest power, will it reshape the global order for good or plunge us into uncharted chaos? The stakes couldn't be higher, and the consequences could alter life as we know it. With every move China makes, from military expansion to economic manipulation, the rest of the world watches nervously, wondering just how far Beijing will go. Today we're uncovering China's ambitions, its calculated strategies, and the risks that could shake our world.
Even though China, as you know, is still run by the Chinese Communist Party, I can assure you of one thing: the Chinese leaders, unlike Stalin or Lenin or Khrushchev, have no desire to prove the superiority of the communist system.
China's rise has been a long time coming, driven by a mix of historical grievances and an unyielding desire to reclaim its status as a global leader. For over a century, the country endured humiliation at the hands of foreign powers. From the Opium Wars to the brutal Japanese occupation, these memories have shaped China's national identity. It's a story of pain, but also one of determination. The phrase, "no more humiliation," echoes in Chinese political rhetoric, and it drives their ambitions on the world stage.
So if it's not communism that they're trying to promote, what is it they're trying to promote? And the simple answer is that they would just like to revive Chinese civilization.
President Xi Jinping has made it clear. The Chinese dream is about rejuvenation. It's about restoring China's former glory and securing economic prosperity for its people. But this dream comes with a vision that reaches far beyond China's borders. Beijing doesn't just want to be a regional power. It wants to shape global norms and institutions in its favor. And this is where things get complicated. Unlike the old Soviet Union, China isn't trying to export communism. Instead, it's about promoting Chinese civilization, proving to the world that their model works. The world must brace for a China that seeks respect and deference from all corners. China's economic strategy is aggressive and unrelenting. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing has poured billions into infrastructure projects across Asia, Africa, and Europe. At first glance, it seems generous, but there's a darker side. Many of these countries are now drowning in debt owed to China. And when they can't pay, Beijing gains a stranglehold over key assets like ports and railways. It's economic imperialism, but wrapped in a friendly package. This isn't just about money, it's about power. A China that controls global trade routes can influence economies far beyond its borders. And don't think that this influence comes without consequences. When Australia demanded an investigation into the origins of COVID-19, China retaliated. Trade restrictions were imposed, costing Australia billions in lost exports. The message was clear: step out of line and you'll face economic punishment. It's a warning shot to any nation considering defying Beijing. As China grows stronger, more countries will feel pressured to fall in line, knowing full well that Beijing can and will use economic leverage to enforce compliance. Imagine a world where China's economy is so vast, so powerful, that opposing them becomes not just risky, but catastrophic. The military side of China's rise is even more alarming. Over the past decade, Beijing has transformed its armed forces into a modern, technologically advanced fighting machine. They're building stealth fighters, deploying hypersonic missiles, and investing heavily in cyber warfare. The South China Sea has become a militarized zone, with artificial islands turned into naval bases. This isn't just a territorial dispute. It's a calculated move to control one of the world's busiest trade routes. If you control these waters, you control trillions of dollars in global commerce. It's a power play with global consequences, and every nation that depends on those shipping lanes has taken notice. But the greatest flashpoint may be Taiwan. China considers Taiwan a breakaway province, and Xi Jinping has made reunification a priority. The threat of military invasion looms larger than ever, especially as China's capabilities grow. Any conflict over Taiwan wouldn't be contained. It would drag in the United States and likely escalate into a full-blown international crisis. Experts warn that even a limited skirmish could trigger a global economic meltdown, given Taiwan's crucial role in semiconductor manufacturing. The stakes are unimaginably high, and any miscalculation could have catastrophic consequences. Now let's talk about the undercurrent of nationalism that runs through Chinese society. It's something the Communist Party both fuels and fears. On one hand, nationalist sentiment is a powerful tool for rallying public support. It reinforces the narrative of a strong China rising from the ashes of humiliation. But nationalism is a double-edged sword. If the Communist Party ever loses its grip on power, a democratic China could become even more aggressive. The paradox is unsettling. The current regime, as authoritarian as it is, might actually be restraining an even more dangerous form of nationalism. Imagine a scenario where the Communist Party collapses and nationalistic factions take over. Instead of focusing on economic growth, a democratic but hyper-nationalist China could pursue a more aggressive foreign policy. This could lead to regional conflicts or even full-scale wars. So while many in the West hope for democratization, there's a real risk that it could backfire. A less controlled, more radical China is a nightmare scenario, and it makes you think twice about hoping for quick political changes in Beijing. But even under the Communist Party, China's influence isn't just limited to military and economic power. Beijing is also waging an ideological battle. They've learned from the collapse of the Soviet Union and are careful not to push communism on the world. Instead, they present an alternative model. Authoritarian capitalism. It's a system that promises economic growth without the messiness of Western democracy. Countries facing instability and corruption are looking at China and wondering if this model might work for them too. If more nations adopt Beijing's approach, we could see a decline in democratic values globally. What does all this mean for places like Hong Kong and Taiwan? Hong Kong's story is already a tragic one. Once a beacon of free speech and democracy, it's now under Beijing's iron grip. The national security law imposed in 2020 effectively crushed dissent, and journalists, activists, and politicians have been arrested or forced into exile. As China's power grows, any remaining hopes for a free Hong Kong will likely vanish. It's a chilling reminder of what happens when Beijing decides to assert control. For Taiwan, the stakes are even higher. Taiwan has built a thriving democracy, and its people have no desire to live under Beijing's authoritarian rule. But China views reunification as non-negotiable, and Xi Jinping has made it clear he won't wait forever. Military exercises around Taiwan have become more frequent, and the rhetoric more aggressive. The world is holding its breath, knowing that a full-scale invasion could drag in the United States and other global powers, igniting a conflict of unimaginable proportions. Taiwan's struggle for survival in the shadow of a rising China is one of the most precarious situations in the world today. But what about the rest of the world? How will global power dynamics shift as China rises to number one? One possibility is that countries will form alliances to counterbalance China's influence. We're already seeing this with initiatives like the Quad, which includes the United States, Japan, Australia, and India. These nations are working together to push back against Beijing's aggression in the Indo-Pacific region. But can these alliances hold firm under pressure, especially when China starts flexing its economic and military muscle even more? And what about the United States? As China edges closer to becoming the dominant global power, the US faces a massive challenge. American leadership on the world stage has been unchallenged for decades, but that's rapidly changing. If the US can't adapt, we could see a world where democratic ideals are overshadowed by authoritarianism. The ideological battle between these two superpowers will define the future, and it's not clear which side will prevail. There's also the technology race. China is investing billions in AI, 5G, and quantum computing. Whoever wins this race will control not just the future of warfare, but also global communications and economic dominance. If China comes out ahead, the West may find itself vulnerable to surveillance and cyber attacks on an unprecedented scale. Imagine a world where Beijing controls the most advanced technology, setting the rules for how information flows and who has access to it. The implications are as frightening as they are far-reaching. And while we're talking about influence, let's not forget China's cultural and diplomatic strategies. Through Confucius Institutes and global media outlets, Beijing is working to shape the narrative about China around the world. They're promoting a positive image, funding cultural events, and even influencing Hollywood. This soft power is subtle but effective, and it's part of a broader plan to make China not just respected, but admired, or at least feared. The reality is that China's ambitions are vast, and their strategies are meticulously planned. They've learned from history, and they know how to use every tool at their disposal, from economic leverage to military might to cultural influence. As they rise, the world must be prepared for a new era where China sets the rules. But how will this new era look? Will it be a world where smaller nations lose their sovereignty to Chinese interests? Will democratic values erode under Beijing's growing influence? Or will global powers find a way to coexist and balance each other out? The world is changing rapidly, and China is at the center of that transformation. What happens next will shape the 21st century in ways we can't fully predict. The only thing we can be sure of is that the stakes are incredibly high. Will China's rise bring stability and prosperity, or will it tip the world into conflict and chaos? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure: the world needs to be ready. What do you think about China's future as the world's top power? Will it reshape the global order for better or worse? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this deep dive insightful, please like and subscribe for more content on global politics and power dynamics. Stay informed and keep watching as this global chess game unfolds.